Right, back at it with Lofink here. In this section, Lofink is claiming that the biblical tradition is demonstrating that being part of the people of God is not a genealogical thing. It's not based on your bloodline, right? And it's an interesting claim because the promise was made to Abraham and his descendants forever. But Lofink is going to try to show how it's not quite that simple. First of all, he starts off, he says, Abraham was called away from family, clan, nation. He was called away from the ancestral DNA, so to speak. And he says that, this shows that the people of God must be torn away from national and relational ties. Right? They're not called to continue the bloodline, continue the clan. They're not called to continue doing things the way they have been done. Right? No, they're called to the new society, a new way of doing things. Abraham and Sarah didn't have children to fulfill this promise that God had made to them through natural generation. No, Isaac was a work of God. Right? Abraham even goes to God, talks about this chapter 15. He's like, you said I was going to be the father of a great nation, but I don't have any kids. How's that going to happen? Right? And then God gives them a child in their old age, showing, hey, this is not just a regular bloodline. This is not a typical patriarchy, primogenitor setup here. It's not just about being a physical descendant of Abraham. Okay, now we get to maybe the weirdest story in the Bible, the sacrifice of Isaac. First of all, please read responsibly, canonically, and non-literally. Again, first of all, don't take this as a literal history. It was not intended to be understood that way. Right? It was intended to give the people a deep understanding of what it meant to be the people of God. Second of all, if you read it canonically, you can see the Ten Commandments in Exodus and elsewhere clearly say, "Thou shalt not kill." So you're not supposed to kill your children for really any reason, but especially for God. Right? That's not the point of the story. If we look at Jesus, he also says that we should not kill those who try to kill us, but we should love those who try to kill us. Right? So even we wouldn't even murder the murderers, right? If we listen to Jesus in the Gospels. So, if you think that God is telling you to kill your children or anyone else, please don't do it. Reach out to someone you trust and get the children to a safe place, and then talk to someone who can help, maybe a mental health care professional or something. Please don't take this passage literally. Okay, so what happened in the story? You read the story, you listened to the story already. God asked Abraham, after he gave them this son in his old age, now he says, go up and sacrifice him. Kill him. Now the sacrifice was a way to give things back to God, right? As a way to participate in the divine nature, saying God gives us all these gifts. Well, we want to give stuff too. So the sacrifice, the idea was giving stuff back to God. And in many of the ancient Israelite sacrifices, if they sacrifice an animal or something, or even fruits of the crops, crops of the field, they would share that with the poor. So it's kind of a way to give back too. Right? But what's going on here is a symbolic story, right, about giving up everything, right, out of this faith and trust in God. Right? So this story is bizarre and terrifying, especially taken as a literalist history, which it's not. Right? What do we see in it? We see that we see a people that has made the will of God its existence. Right? Abraham's not gonna count on his own, even on his own progeny. Right? What is he gonna count on? God. The same God who gave him that kid in the first place, right? He's going to trust that same God to keep his promise, even if he doesn't understand how it's going to work. Right? So his obedience wasn't blind. Right? He believed again in God's promise. Just like he believed when he told him before, when he didn't have any kids. Now he says, go up there and slaughter your son, sacrifice him to me. He still believes it. He's going to believe it again. That's the point that Loafing thinks is the key element in the story. And then what happens? Well, must have been an awkward situation, right? Isaac is carrying the wood for the sacrifice himself. At some point he must have put it together, right? He asks, where is the animal for the sacrifice, right? Talk about awkward, right? But anyways, Isaac, what did he see in his father in the midst, of this terrible event? He saw him as a person of faith. He understood, my father trusts God. Right? He saw that trust. And therefore, he could become a person of trust too. Now, again, please don't take this too literally. I realize in real life this kid would be scarred beyond belief, Right? You have to take it as a symbolic story. Try to understand what were the authors trying to tell us, and what is God revealing to us, right, through their inspired efforts. So Loafing says this is telling us a lot about what it means to be the people of God, right? And that faith can only be handed on successfully if the children see that their parents believe that God's more important than anything else in the world. Right? Now, remember, God's love. So is loving others the most important thing to your parents, right? To you. This is the way that faith is passed on. By example, by community. That's why God needs a people of God, right? Someone to show the vision. To show what human beings can be. Right? To bring about a revolution. Not by force, but by example. So, again, God does not have Abraham go through with this, but he sees his faith and he gives him his son back. Right? He says, because you would not withhold from me even your only begotten son. Right? Which represents everything that's important to us. Right? Especially for the ancient people. Right? But still for people today. This was the most important thing. Their children were more important than themselves. The story isn't go kill yourself for me. The story is kill your son. Because Isaac would have meant more to Abraham than Abraham would have meant to himself. Right? And Isaac sees this, that Abraham would give up everything. His faith in God, or his trust in God, his trust in the goodness of God, even in the bizarrest of situations. He sees this, and he himself becomes a believer. And now he has a son back, but it's a son who shares his faith, right? Look what's happening. The people of God, right? We saw Sarah convinced a few chapters back. When Sarah first heard that she would have a son in her old age, she laughed, right? But she too became a person of faith when God delivered on that promise. Now we see Isaac too. We see the faith growing, right? And how is it growing, right? It's being shared. Well, here we go. We're back to Ratzinger again, right? An authority, so to speak, someone has an experience, they share it with others. you hear it, and if it matches with what you see with your life, right, then you share in that knowledge too. Then you come to believe it too, right? It's the way most knowledge works. So back to this point that Lofink was making about the patriarchal narratives in the Old Testament, intending to show that Israel was not just about natural descent. Israel is about God's election, right? Again, this fits with the origins of the country, the origins of the nation of Israel. A bunch of different tribes, right? They don't all share the same bloodline. They come together and they form a story about being one bloodline, one family, but they maintain in that story the emphasis that it's not about a blood relation. You need more than that. It's more than an automatic succession of natural generations, right? And you see this being kind of like the idea of the primogenitor and the patriarchal primogenitor, pass it down to the firstborn son. That's always disrupted frequently, right? Instead of Esau, Jacob gets the blessing. The promise is passed down through him. Why? Because Esau was willing to trade it for a bowl of soup. It's one of the worst moves of all time, right? Joseph, right, the youngest son instead of Reuben, the oldest son, right? Ephraim instead of Manasseh. You see this, they're saying, hey, it's not this strict tradition and bloodline thing. This is what allows St. Paul to claim, right, that you're not an Israelite because you're a descendant of Abraham. Right? This was his claim when he was explaining that the church was the new people of Israel, the baptized Christians, Jewish and Gentile alike. Right? Because it's not about your bloodline. It's about your faith. It's about your trust in God. Lofink also sees this emphasis on faith, not blood, in the dedication of the firstborn males to the temple. So in the Israelite tradition, every firstborn Israelite male belonged to Yahweh in a special way. And so he would go to the temple and be dedicated or redeemed. And then he could go back to his family. Right? This showed, right, that this person, and therefore all the Israelites, were not here to serve the clan. They're not here for the family. They're not just trying to build up wealth and conquer and get territory and make more Gadites or make more Manassanites, or make more people for their tribe. No, they're here to upbuild the people of God. They're here to transcend those tribal lines and show people that there's a new way to live, right? A way to live that does not involve tribal conflicts. It's not us versus them anymore. This new way is us, with the gates wide open for anyone to join in who wants to live in the society that sees other people as parts of God's family, as dignified human subjects, who wants to be naked and unashamed, right? Who wants to have an intimate communal relationship with everyone. A society free of oppression and free of forced practice and some religiosity that is not an expression of authentic revelation. The new people of God. He also sees this stress on faith and trust in God and not the concerns of the clan or the immediate family, in the way that the Levites are dedicated to God. The Levites didn't have any land. The Levites were like this tribe with no land. They never even, this is the promised land. They don't have any land. Right? They're bound to God. Right? And they are God's property their whole lives, helping all the Israelites to say, hey, we're all God's people. Right? It's not about how much land we conquer for our clan. It's not about our nation versus other nations. Right? It's about living as the people of God. And Lo Fink says that you got to do this. This is not something you do once and then just let it go for a while. It's got to happen every generation. There's got to be a constant rededication, right? To say, hey, I'm not just here to look out for my family. I'm not just trying to make it rich for me and my kids, right? We have to constantly renew the covenant, so to speak, right? So we come back and say, hey, listen, we're here to live the life of the New Jerusalem. Right? We're here to live in communal intimacy, right? With God, each other, right? Nature. We're here to be our brother's keeper, right? Not to see our brother as competition that we take out, right? Not to be nation versus nation, tribe versus tribe, family versus family, person versus person. No. But to be part of God's family and to love like God loves. So again, the concerns of the country, clan, of family, right, ethnic group, whatever groups you want to divide people into, and see the other ones as competition, those are in opposition to being the people of God. Because people of God, right, live in intimacy with one another, with gates wide open. Doesn't matter what tribe you are from, you're a child of Abraham, right? Loafington goes on to the story of Numbers 13 and 14. This is kind of an interesting story because, there's kind of like this assumption or idea that the Israelites left Egypt and then they wandered around the desert for 40 years. Right? Then they got to the Promised Land. Now, if you read the Bible, they actually got to the Promised Land pretty quickly. But then they sent these 12 scouts out, right? And the scouts came back and they said, oh, we don't want to go in there. They were afraid because the people living there looked really tough and big. It was only Joshua that says, let's go. God's with us. We can go take the Promised Land. Right? But they don't get the Promised Land. Because they did not trust God and they wouldn't go in because they were scared of the people in there. They were afraid that they were too big and tough and they couldn't take them. Right? What happens? They wander the desert for 40 years. And everybody who made it to the Promised Land initially dies in the desert, except for Joshua. And then their children get to go in, right? Again, a new generation, because this new generation now, they have faith. They reform the covenant, or more accurate to say, God re-offers the covenant to them. And now they're ready, right? They learned from the mistakes of their parents, so to speak. And they went in. Again, Leo Fink is very big on analyzing, hey, every generation has to do this. It's a choice, right, that every generation makes if they want to be the people of God or not. you see here he talks about the slandering of the land as the true sin of the people of God. Again, what is it? They don't trust. Right? They say the land's not that great because they're scared of the people living in it. The same thing we saw with, Adam and Eve. They didn't trust that God was giving them good advice when he told them not to eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. So this trust in God and one another, once again, is the foundation of the people of God. So this is why John baptized in the River Jordan. Right? He wanted to remind the people, hey, it's not enough just to be the bloodline of Abraham. If we really want to be the people of God, we have to trust in God. Right? We have to choose to be the people who trust in God, in one another, and in the nations. Right? We have to be open to others. So he went out where the Israelites were when they first chose to enter the promised land. Right? Where the children of that generation that had to spend the 40 years and perish in the desert. Where their children said, we're ready, we have faith. We have faith. When they were ready to go in. That's what he was trying to tell the Israelites. We need to once again have faith. We need to trust in God again, this generation. Right? Now is the time of repentance. So you can't rely on, hey, well, I'm a Catholic, right? Hey, I'm an Israelite, right? That's not enough. That's not going to do it, right? And that's what baptism is about. Now, the fact that we baptize infants, it does obscure it a bit. He acknowledges that. But it's not, hey, you're just, hey, because, your parents are Catholic, then you're part of the people of God. Or because your parents are Christian, you're part of you get baptized automatically and you're part of the people of God. He said, now that's kind of would be the same as saying, hey, I'm the descendant of Abraham, I'm Jewish, so therefore I'm part of the people of God. That's not it. That's not enough. Right? Every generation has to make that choice of faith to be the people of God. Remember, God doesn't force things on you, right? If he made you be part of his people just because of your DNA, right, just because of your genetic heritage, right? That would be forcing. That wouldn't be a choice. That wouldn't be freedom. So he quotes Cardinal Walter Casper here. Says, a person is a Christian not because of descent or belonging to a particular nation or a particular culture. A person is Christian rather because of God's free, gracious election and the free decision of the faith that responds to it. It's the faith and the choice to be like God. The choice to love unconditionally and to be trusting and open to the goodness in oneself and God and others. That's what makes someone a person of God. That's what makes a people the people of God.